So this is a ruling that happened in the United Kingdom just yesterday. Let's see what we see. Supreme Court legally defines woman. What now for the trans movement? Let's see what they say.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
A pivotal moment in a landmark case. Joy and relief from campaigners in Edinburgh. They've won their battle over the legal definition of what a woman is.
We counsel against reading this judgment as a triumph of one or more groups in our society at the expense of another. It is not.
He has an annoying
But
voice.
it is a significant defeat for the Scottish Government, who argued transgender people with a gender recognition certificate should have the same sex-based protections as biological women. A ruling which could place greater
She is really
restrictions on
tearing up
trans
about
people
that.
in Scotland, England and Wales.
It means that women's spaces are finally secure. We can restore that in our public sector organisations. So all hospital wards, all changing rooms, they will all be women only.
I can't be any more delighted. Use the tears. It's brilliant news. Lesbians can actually have places of our own.
The noise around gender identity in Scotland has been deafening in the wake of Nicola Sturgeon's attempts to push forward reforms before she stepped down as First Minister.
Do you think this ruling puts this fierce debate in Scotland to bed?
No, because the people that were arguing the other way feel as passionately as we do.
At these London celebrations, though, a note of dissent.
Trans rights are human rights. For now!
The Equality Act still gives
Yeah.
transgender people protection against discrimination, but there is concern.
Yeah. So when you, like that, what we just saw, when you, yeah. I have to say, like, there's a lot of AGP kind of cross-dresser things happening over in the United Kingdom, America too, but that's the kind of stuff that happens when you have, like, you know, old men with a beard, you know, skin and bones, putting on Victoria's Secret lingerie and, you know, parading around or going in certain spaces. The thing is, just like in the United States with Donald Trump basically stating that there's only two genders, which there are only two genders, male and female, but you got everybody in between saying, oh, I'm Zim Zers, or I'm Two-Spirit, and you got all this kind of confusion and all that kind of stuff. It's going to make it where, you know, if they're going to rule anything, they're going to make it cut and dry instead of all of this. Because you can't have basically anything like this spectrum in between, because it doesn't define, you know, the two things that we can clearly see, which there exist male and female. There exists male and there's female. So, I mean, you got some people that don't say that they're anything, they're non-binary people, but then you got everyone else saying, I'm this kind of, you know all the different pronouns. So there's only two pronouns recognized now. And that stops a lot of people that can just not go through a medical process, which, you know, they call people that believe in that, you know, true scum or trans medicalists, people that actually go through the hormone replacement therapy. They actually are medically transitioning to replace and do away with their, even though chromosomes are going to always tell the story, they're transitioning from one thing to the other, either male to female or female to male. But when you have people that are just slapping on wigs, looking like Medea, and just coming into spaces. I know some people do it as grifters, but they're going to come into spaces like that or have their thing out in a locker room. What else would you expect? And let's not even get to transitioning children. You already know there's going to be a lot of problems with that. So this is where we are now. Now the United Kingdom just ruled this. So it's just like, this is probably not the end of everything. Trans women in sports, female sports, it's a lot going on. So, and it's causing an uproar on either side. So, you have people that are legitimately transitioning, that legitimately have gender dysphoria, but then you have this Sam or something over here on the other end, like coming up and saying, I'm a woman, and I'm gonna go in the women's restroom, and they look every bit like a dude with a wig on. What do you expect is gonna happen? So we can't just kind of pick and choose and single out everybody, because you can't just go like, okay, this person is this person that. The best thing to do is just to say, we have women over here, we have men over here. So if you don't look the part, anyone who is passing, let's say if they are passing, they won't have any problem going into the restroom. No one's going to look at them. No one's going to bat an eye and look at them. But if you don't look the part, that stops those people that are legitimate. Like you seen the videos where the guy's like, you're a dude. Look at your shoulders and stuff. And I think it was McDonald's or something coming out of the women's restroom. Of course, people are going to see that because they're not even putting forth the effort. They're just throwing on something saying they're a female. That's why these rules are put into place, to stop that from happening, to stop people from doing that. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it. You can't just pick and choose. So what better way than to just stop it for everybody? So that includes people that's actually transitioning, going through medical transition, actually replacing their hormones. And that stops all the grifters and people that are literally doing it because they have a fetish or something. But anyway, back to the video.
In the community about what comes next.
I'm absolutely gutted by today's ruling. I think it undoes 20 years of understanding that if a transgender person with a gender recognition certificate has obtained that GRC, that they are, for almost all legal intents and purposes, their acquired gender. It feels like the UK is an increasingly scary place to be openly trans, and I think that this ruling is only going to make that worse.
I just remind the House that the Right Honourable Gentleman struggled to define what a woman was.
By the way, why does that guy look like a drunkard? Like, this guy looks disheveled. Look at him. Look at that hair. He looks disheveled. What am I talking about? Look at my hair.
Years, it has been an uncomfortable issue for Keir Starmer and his party. The government welcomed today's ruling.
I think what it does do is give clarity to women and service providers. And obviously, more widely, single-sex spaces are protected in the law, and they will remain protected under this government.
Speaking on a podcast this afternoon, like Scotland's First Minister accepted the outcome.
Do you think that on behalf of the Scottish Government you owe women an apology?
We've acted in good faith on this question. We've tried to navigate our way through two pieces of legislation, and during which, of course, our position has been supported twice by courts in Scotland in this particular case. So the debate has been around very uncertain areas of definition, and the Supreme Court has concluded on that, and that's an end to the matter.
But politically and practically, the full ramifications of this ruling will need to be assessed long after the singing stops.
Well, we can talk now to the gender-critical activist Maya Forstater, who won a legal battle after being let go by her employer after she stated in social media messages that transgender women are men. And Samantha Kane is a transgender barrister who joins us from the Highlands of Scotland. Maya Forstater first. Is this a victory for common sense, or is it a licence to vilify trans people?
It is a victory for common sense, and it's a victory for women's rights. Calling someone a man or a woman is not vilifying them, it's just describing them accurately, and you need to be able to describe people accurately in order to keep them safe and in order to protect other people's rights. So even talking about it in terms of vilification is wrong. Everybody is born male or female, and that cannot change. And that doesn't mean that they have to live their life according to gender stereotypes, but it does mean that they have to respect other people's rights and privacy.
Samantha Kane, the court has just given biological women back their basic rights.
Yes. Well, if I may jump into here, the issue here is that the ruling of today has already misinterpreted. It's not really for a court, with all respect to the Supreme Court, of course, is to define what's a man or what's a woman. They merely interpreted a very narrow aspect of the Equality Act. And in my view, this definition being taken out of context and indeed inflamed transphobia and other suffering of already marginalized group in society.
Right. Well, let me get you to answer that, Maya, that this has inflamed transphobia and a marginalised group is now more fearful than it was.
I don't think this has inflamed transphobia at all. The Equality Act protects people against discrimination and harassment. It protects everyone based on their sex, their age, disability, race, and what's called gender reassignment, so being trans. So everyone is still protected against discrimination and harassment at work, using a service, renting a flat.
About that. She says the Equality Act. She looks bitter. Like, she looks like someone who's unhappy. Look at her face. Like, she says Equality Act, but we all know when you try to get a job and stuff that it's really hard to prove discrimination. Like, anybody can just look at your application and just try to come up with excuses as to why they don't want to hire you. That's BS. That's absolute BS as far as equality. Saying that, if you're going to call somebody out something and then they're looking the part, let's say like Blair White, for instance, call her out. You're not going to call her a man in public and, try to basically have people clock her, which she's like unclockable unless someone were to say, yeah, this person was born as this, or use anybody else, for example. So yeah, that doesn't do anything but put certain people possibly in danger, because you got people out there that are crazy, or you got people that use a little panic defense and stuff like that, which you should be open for everybody. But some of these people actually know what they're getting into, and then they act and play like they're, this or that. So anyway, let's go back to her. Or it.
At university, at school, and so on. This is not about transphobia, it's about protecting women's rights, which means you have to know what a woman is. And one thing the Supreme Court said very clearly was that there's very little in common between the group of women, people who are female, born with female bodies, who can dress as they like, and they're not necessarily feminine archetypes, and men who wish to be feminine archetypes. It's an experience in life that a woman just can't have, of being a man who wishes he was a woman.
Yes,
so they're different groups.
Samantha.
I don't think it works like that.
Can I come in here? I'm afraid that's quite an unfair generalization. I mean, some of us, the pioneers in sex reassignments, when we underwent that many, many decades ago, we forgot as we were men. I tried to become a man all my life. I couldn't. I literally couldn't. It is not a choice. We were born like this. There's a medical procedure to go through. There is female hormones every transgender takes, which actually feminize every single cell of their body. So even the biology eventually changed. I'll give you one example for your information. I had an intimate relationship with a medical doctor in my youth who never realized I was transgender female. And that's to give you an example.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. If I saw them on the right there, I would think that they are cross-dresser. I like, they're not, maybe the person that they were with didn't know, but I clearly see that they were not born female. That's just obvious there.
So how you expect me and people like me to go into some male changing room? And I mean, this is a ridiculous, really.
Maya, let me get you to answer that.
I'm not for words. Very often I'm not.
Samantha, let Maya answer your point.
So a gender recognition certificate, in order for somebody to get one, they don't have to have surgery, they don't have to take hormones. All they need to have is a diagnosis, and you can get a diagnosis now for a few £100s on the internet. So, and obviously people who are running public services or people who are using services, for example, if a woman wants a female doctor, she should be able to have a female doctor. And if a man wishes he was a woman and wants to be in that situation, the woman can't ask, what surgery have you had, and doesn't want to know. You know, the last thing we want to do is talk about somebody's intimate details. So, unfortunately, when you have rules, they have to be clear.
Samantha, let me just ask you, after today's ruling, will you continue to call yourself a trans woman or a woman?
I'm not a trans woman, I'm a woman. As simple as that. We don't have a hierarchy of women. All women are equal.
Oh no!
And really, this is an issue where it is just really by some, with respect, either hate group or somebody trying to actually incite hatred. Because
Maya, let me just put that back to Maya. But do you accept and respect Samantha's definition of herself there?
People can use whatever words they like to describe themselves. Some people call themselves non-binary. But the point is, when you're interacting with other people, with the state, as an employer, as a service provider, or sharing spaces, then the fact that Samantha wants to call himself a woman or non-binary or any of 56 genders is something.
She just said himself. She just threw this shade at this guy. Or there you go.
I can respect as a form of self-expression, but not as a reason
see, I just
to come
did it
into
too.
a
It's all
women's
mental.
space
It's what
or
you
play in a
see.
women's sport.
You know, sometimes it's by mistake at this
or be in a
person.
women's crisis centre.
Well, you just referred to Samantha as a man there. Do you not accept that what Lord Hodge said today is that trans people are still protected from discrimination and harassment under the Equality Act, and therefore you describing Samantha as a man there could be viewed as discriminatory or harassing?
Like she's swallowing. Look at her. She's you saw her. She was like, gulp. Look at her. She's like, and she said, "Oh crap, I'm about to get my ass fired."
Could be viewed as discriminatory or harassing.
Look on the left.
No, it's not.
As a man there,
she's swallowing.
Could be viewed as discriminatory
crap, I'm in
or
trouble.
harassing.
No, it's not. What Lord Hodge said was the Equality Act protects trans people from harassment and discrimination. So that means things like you shouldn't be fired at work, you shouldn't be paid less than another person, you shouldn't be refused
well,
to
ma'am,
book
you're
at
about
a
to get
restaurant
fired.
or refused to be able to rent a flat, for example. But it doesn't mean that other people have to pretend that you are the sex that you're not, or to refer to you in the way that you want to be referred to as.
From Samantha to that. Samantha.
What is the danger of this group that is really mostly marginalized and mostly frightened and so on the
To be honest, what just happened? To be honest, the danger, let me go back. I need to get through this video. The danger, honestly, from this is the fact that you have some people actually posing that actually go in.
Group.
Let me get back to where I was. You got some people posing, entering these spaces.
Refer to men who identify as trans people.
Mostly marginalized and mostly
in the way that you want to be referred to as.
From Samantha to that. Samantha.
What is the danger?
Yeah, the danger is that you have certain people that are using this as a way, like you got crossdressers saying they want to be under the trans umbrella. They're not transgender. They're just men, dressing as women. And they can say, oh no, that's what transgender women are. Women, they're just posing. But like I said, there's a clear difference. You have That's why it's very important to consider gender dysphoria and medically transitioning, because that's what transitioning is. You're going from one to the other, male to female, female to male, not anything in between. But crossdressers just do it as a fetish. It's autogynephilia, AGP. They do it, it's a fetish. So they do this because it satisfies them. So you do have some people that actually use that. They want to have, they want to get bold one day, put on something, and then say, you know what, I want to get my rocks off by going in a woman's restroom and then, doing whoever knows what in the stall while they're in there, while there's all kinds of people, children, all kinds of stuff going in. You got those kind of people. Not trying to say transgender people. Transgender people used to go in, do what they have to do, get out. They're not there for anything but just to live, use the bathroom, and go about their business. But you do have people like that exist. That's where the danger is, and that's why they're cutting, making it so cut and dry now.
Of this group that is really mostly marginalized and mostly frightened and so on the general public or indeed women. I mean, what is the fear here from me and other people like me? What's so frightening about that?
I mean, I haven't talked about fear, but I mean, for example, men do the majority of crime, the majority of violent crime, 98% of sex crimes, and that's one of the reasons why we have single-sex spaces and services, why we have men's prisons and women's prisons. It's to protect women. And men who identify as transgender, who identify as trans women, are a vulnerable group. They're a vulnerable group of men, and they can be kept safe in men's prisons, for example.
Right, Maya Forstater, I know many people would disagree with what you've just said, but thank you very much. And to Samantha Kane as well. Thank you both very much for coming on the program.
The Supreme Court's unanimous decision.
Basically, she just said, shut the hell up. Moving on. That's basically what she just said. Like, lady, I don't think she gets it. She seems like one of those older black women that, have a set mindset, and they believe what they believe in. And there's no change in that.
Terms woman and sex in the Equality Act refer to a biological woman and biological sex. The Tory leader Kemi Badenoch was quick to react.
Sex has always meant biological sex, and what we have seen is a lot of people misinterpreting the law. They've had guidelines from all sorts of organisations that actually do not follow the law. So I really welcome this judgment.
Well, the judgment has been welcomed by many, but has dismayed trans rights campaigners. So
I'm not trying to roast. I don't want to roast. Her teeth. That was bad. Way to stop. I don't want to turn this into a roasting channel. Your teeth look like they got too generous with the cow. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Anyway, back to the podcast.
That actually do not follow the law. So I really welcome this judgment.
Well, the judgment has been welcomed by many, but has dismayed trans rights campaigners. So where does this leave their movement? Kieran Moodley has been taking a look.
Well,
this was the fight for LGBTQ rights. Police officers clubbing marchers in 1970, just a year after the Stonewall riot in New York. Even though trans people were part of the early movement, they have often struggled for acceptance alongside their allies. The long march to equality took decades, and in America it seemed to culminate in the 2015 Supreme Court ruling that legalized same-sex marriage.
This decision affirms what millions of Americans already believe in their hearts. When all Americans are treated as equal, we are all more free.
But were transgender people equal?
Ordinance.
Later that year, this advert ran in Texas.
Any man at any time could enter a woman's bathroom simply by claiming to be a woman that day.
Claiming trans people were predators taking advantage of women in bathrooms. And so began a new, loud chapter of the culture war, with the trans community saying they were being scapegoated, while opponents claimed women's rights were at risk. The Obama administration stood with transgender people.
We see you, we stand with you, and we will do everything we can to protect you going forward. And please know that history is on your side.
I love your question. But history didn't see Donald Trump coming along. He banned trans people from serving in the military, and soon Republican states began to roll back LGBTQ rights more broadly. It was around this time in the UK that the author J.K. Rowling entered the fray, saying that trans women were not women, and that making it easier for people to transition would infringe on women's rights and female-only spaces. In the UK last year, the Cass Review found that children questioning their gender identity
That last thing
were
that she said sounds like a witch move.
Author J.K. Rowling entered the fray, saying that trans women were not women, and that making it easier for people to transition would infringe on women's rights and female-only spaces.
That part right
In the UK
there.
last year, the Cass Review found that children questioning their gender identity were let down by a lack of research. That coincided with Elon Musk speaking about his own child who transitioned, saying it was all part of an ideology.
They call it dead naming for a reason.
Yeah,
All right, so the reason it's called dead naming is because your son is dead. So my son Xavier is dead. Killed by the woke mind virus.
Kamala supports transgender sex changes in jail with our money.
That makes sense why they their kid probably wants nothing to do with them, because they're basically, Elon Musk is basically making his kid sound like he's not a human being, or I'm sorry, making her, not him, but making them sound like they're not a human being. So, saying it's just basically the woke mind virus. But hey, you have different cases for whatever things, but I don't think that's probably the way to go about doing it by speaking that way.
Trans people were now constantly being targeted by the Republican machine, which Musk was funding during last year's presidential election.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear that I
Come Trump's second inauguration, the issue was front and center.
There are only two genders, male and female.
The populist rise has been seen everywhere. Just last week, Hungary's parliament said the government could now ban public events held by the LGBTQ community. But backlash begets backlash, with Democrats in America saying they will fight back.
Trans people are people first. Their identity and sexual orientation has never and will never make them any lesser, no matter what any president or billionaire wants to say.
What a nice picture this is, huh, Governor?
The first showdown is coming after President Trump signed an executive order to ban transgender athletes from women's sports. The state of Maine said it would not comply. Today, the White House sued Maine's education department.
The Department of Justice will not sit by when women are discriminated against in sports.
Is that Riley
This is about
Gaines?
sports.
Gosh,
This is
talk
also about these young women's
somebody who
personal
has
safety.
An attitude.
As the fight for trans equality goes on in America, does today's UK Supreme Court decision mark a line in the sand? Or will it make some wonder why the trans community, such a tiny, marginalised people, has become the focus of so much anger and division?
Well, I'm joined now by Ant Lexer, who plays Abby Montgomery in the hit Netflix series Sex Education, and Charlie Craggs, who's an activist and author of To My Trans Sisters. Ant, first of all, how has this left you feeling tonight?
I would describe it as heartbreak. I feel heartbroken. Like, getting myself out of bed this morning was hard after receiving this news this morning. And
it looks pretty good.
The only thing keeping me afloat is that I have received so many messages of support and solidarity from people within my community and outside of it.
And heartbroken why? I mean, is it about your place in society?
I am first and foremost a woman. That doesn't feel like some political stance. It just feels like who I am. And it has always felt like who I am. So not being recognised within law, especially a law that is designed to protect us, and that was why it was there, just feels terrifying. Not even about today, but the precedent that it's setting for not just the UK, but across the world.
She
It
could do a
just
good
has left me
Daisy
feeling unprotected.
cosplay. Daisy from
Charlie,
Super Mario
I mean, you do
Brothers.
lots of things, but you are more of an activist, I suppose, than Ant. So where do you place this historically in terms of your struggle?
I mean, historically, we've been through so much, so I'm not worried about all that our community is going to be able to get through this. I'm more worried about the community of the women campaigning for this law change, of what they're going to do with their time now, because so much of their time has been spent campaigning for this win for them, but what have they actually won?
So you don't feel set back?
Honestly, no, I'm more bored than anything. I think they've been campaigning for the last 5 or so years under the guise of as JK is always saying, it's not transphobia, it's just about protecting women from predatory men who, as you can see in that video just played now, it's all about how predatory men could lie about being trans and put on a dress and go into a bathroom. So really, they've always said, like, this isn't transphobia, it's not about trans women, it's about predatory men. But in banning us from women's spaces and forcing us to use men's spaces with those predatory men, I don't see how this is a win for anyone, and I don't see how these people can sleep with a conscience knowing they're sending trans women into bathrooms with predatory men who are going to harass them.
But not just that, they don't even have to be predatory men. If you're just sending trans women into a men's restroom, they're going to look, especially if they completely pass, they're going to be like, imagine how they're going to look. Same with putting those same people into like a men's, prison or something, So you got that. So it's kind of like an issue you got one issue, but then you got another issue over here. So that's just a problem either way in that one.
Will this change your daily life at all?
I think it won't really change my daily life at all because, what are you going to do? Put me in prison? Okay, put me in a men's one, please. But I think it's going to affect a lot more people than just trans people's lives, and that's actually what I'm looking forward to, because I think when people realise that it's going to be butch lesbians being asked why they're in women's bathrooms, because that's already happening. I have many friends who have been stopped in bathrooms who are just cisgender, born women, lesbians. Women, there was a viral post recently going around about a woman who's going through chemo who was affronted in a bathroom and asked why she was in there, and they assumed she was trans because she was bald. We see women from different cultures who are built differently to like the kind of Western ideal of femininity being constantly policed over their gender. We see it in the Olympics. Every time there's Olympics, there's a female athlete who is policed over, are they really a woman? It's going to hurt lesbians, it's going to hurt women going through things like chemo, it's going to hurt women from different cultures, it's going to hurt a lot more than trans people. And if anything, I look forward to that, because then we can all rally together and prove that this was just absolute nonsense and it's not protecting anyone.
And will this change your life at all on a day-to-day basis?
I second Charlie in that it doesn't necessarily change my life in terms of the protection I was already receiving, because transphobia has existed for a very long time. But it breaks my heart to wake up every day thinking that when I grew up in rural Devon and I didn't see queer people surrounded me in the adults and in the community, I felt so isolated, and the only thing I associated with transness was fear and danger, and like having our identities constantly questioned just makes me so entirely worried for the young trans people who already feel alone.
And do you think this makes it easier to question your existence?
Yeah, and
because
just
there's a legal
feel
legitimacy to it.
Yeah, and it's when it's a headline and it's you see these women who are proclaimed feminists celebrating that we are being not protected by law. How is that going to make a young trans woman feel who's already terrified and confused?
So just briefly, for both of you, what is the goal for you both now in terms of, the trans rights movement? Should it be legal recognition, or have you hit a brick wall on that and that's gone?
I think being recognised as a woman legally is really important.
You still want that?
I still want that, because I think it means that then we can start looking at the things that intersect how we are affected as women and as trans women, because there is a difference.
And Charlie?
I don't care too much about being recognised as a woman, because I just don't want to be recognised at all. I just want to be left alone, and I think that's what we all want after this war against our tiny community. We are less than 1% of the population, and it's been a constant onslaught against us, and we just want to be left alone.
Well, Charlie Craggs and Lexa, thank you both very much indeed for joining us tonight.
All right, so much for that. Well, that's
a woman is defined as
pretty good video. Let's play this one. It's just 6 minutes and 29 seconds.
Someone who was born biologically female. It may seem obvious, but it took a Supreme Court judge in the UK to turn common sense into law.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex woman judgments.
Champions of the cause were ecstatic with the result.
We technically already saw this. Anyway, it just started to play another video. But anyway, that's it for the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. Leave a comment in the comment section on your thoughts and non-biased. But if it's hateful, obviously, just say it in a respectful way. If you don't agree with something, say it in a respectful way. You don't have to leave anything hateful or anything, because that doesn't help anybody or anything. But other than that, that is it for the video.